Welcome and thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Lead to Win podcast, a podcast focused on exploring strategies, mindsets, and stories behind successful leadership and personal development. On today's episode, I have the privilege of visiting with Dave Nordel. Dave is a retired United States Air Force Command Chief Master Sergeant with over 30 years of experience. He's a registered nurse, emergency manager, and served as a medic in areas of operation to include Saudi Arabia, Somalia, South America, Iraq, Korea, Japan, and Hungary. Growing up in a dairy farming community, he left home at 19 to join the Air Force and ascended through the enlisted ranks to culminate as the senior enlisted leader for all nuclear missile forces in the United States. He's led city government activities and large organizations as an emergency manager for multiple communities through COVID-19 and other disaster situations. He currently lives in Montana and currently speaks to young leaders to aid in their development and future successes. Dave is passionate about veteran transition and offers authentic perspectives on PTSD, moral injury, and other mental health challenges. He's the head of Fab Consulting, and he's also the author of a #1 best-selling book titled Giving Back: Life and Leadership from the Farm to the Combat Zone and Beyond. Excited for this conversation today, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'm your host, Bergen. Let's do it. Dave, a warm welcome to you, and thanks for coming on today.
You bet. I always, when people read that intro like that, because that's basically what I send you. That's the long bio. When people read that intro like that, and then we have this conversation, especially based on that background, it still makes me uncomfortable. And I always tell people, you talked about veteran transition. I always have to smile and say, you got to take it, Dave, because really what the words are there are describe you. I mean, it's nothing. It's just what you've done. But we veterans are terrible at it, man. We just stink. It's just awful. I mean, I and me are beat out of us from day one. And as we transition, I've been out in the transition world. We're going to talk a lot about that actually, but I've been out in the transition world now for 10 years and it still is not natural. So no, but I appreciate the intro. There's a lot there, a lot to talk about. There's a second book. We can talk about that too.
Absolutely.
Similar genre, but yeah, I'm glad to be here. And the title of your podcast says it all. It's just, we gotta be winners. And the way to do that is with help. Right. Far too often we have great ideas and we're really good at stuff. And, most of us like to play to our strengths, but it doesn't matter how good you are or how strong you are when you start to put it all together, even if you take one nugget, and I said to you before we started, I said, I always keep a pen and a notepad here because you're probably going to say something brilliant that I'm stealing it.
About that, but I'll try.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, tell me about your time on a dairy farm. I've never been in that environment.
Right.
But I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons from that and in that setting. And what have you been able to take with you throughout your career?
Well, yeah, the first book really covers that, right? Life and Leadership from the Farm to the Combat Zone and Beyond. I will tell you that Dave's viewpoint of growing up in that environment, especially watching the people, when you're younger, you're learning, right? So you're carrying grain buckets or milk buckets, but you're not the guy. And when you're younger, you don't see the financial piece behind that, paying bills. And, back then milk was sold on butter fat. So your cows you bought and raised and fed your cows so that they produced the most butter fat, because when the creamery took the milk, that was how the math equation was done. But hey, the farm is full of every single thing I think that life throws at you. And it's right there in front of your face every day. I mean, I can remember hot summer days with my legs swinging over a manger, and I would sit there the whole time and watch a cow have a calf. As soon as I saw that she was getting ready to have it, I'd sit there. Sometimes I was hours, and I would stay there. I honestly sometimes would go, I think I could, I got so good at it. I'd be like, I could take a break, and I'd run to the house and get a sandwich, and I'd run back, and I'd sit there and I'd watch that whole thing. So you're seeing life, you're seeing death. That's there. You lose animals. Sometimes they're animals that contribute to the farm. Sometimes they're the dog, right? So you deal with that adversity. You become the best project manager in the world because the work is never done And so it all has to be prioritized. Mother Nature gets in the way. She helps, she hurts. It's all there. Adversity. Sometimes you think you're on cloud nine and everything's going well, and then you get a curveball, or vice versa. You get to sit back a little bit and see the fruits of your hard work and your labor, and appreciate that. So it's a lot of good tools. The one thing it didn't prepare me for, Bo, was walking outside of that bubble. I'm 19. I got a pretty good start in life. I mean, my mom and I was raised just by my mom, and my mom and I definitely did not have much money. So there's that dynamic. But I had a lot of skills. I just think growing up that way helped me. And then I get to basic training, and I'm in this huge melting pot. And I'll tell you, for all the things I just described, the things that I didn't know, I knew nothing about diversity. I knew nothing about urban life. I knew nothing about growing up as a black man or a brown woman. I knew nothing about any of that. We have a lot of DEI conversations these days, and I kind of laugh. It's a shame that it became an acronym, because I'm a 40-year DEI expert, and you got to have those conversations. So I came unequipped for the world in certain ways. And, we're going to talk about leadership and leading to win. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about closing the 25-yard gap, which is a keynote speech that I have, which is putting yourself in those uncomfortable positions to figure out exactly what motivates whatever and whoever you're leading, and how to better understand that, either through empathy or just knowledge, and gathering the type of information that you need to make the right decision, not a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot there, man. We go on, but we could talk on the farm life. We could talk through the whole thing. I'd take it through summers and winters and rain and mud and being run over by a tractor and all of it. It's in the book. It's I draw the corollaries to what you learn when you're 4 years old laying underneath the John Deere tractor tire. You kind of get a perspective on things. So
absolutely, yeah. So tell me a little bit about your rise through the ranks in the Air Force. What do you kind of attribute your success to?
So a couple of things. When you start out and you're on the bottom, there's no underneath you, right? So, and I wasn't one of these guys that enlisted for a certain amount of time and got stripes when I came in. I started off slick 0. In fact, people would salute me because they thought I was a lieutenant, because I couldn't see anything on my sleeves. So when I finally got a stripe, then that changed. It was probably kind of weird. Here's what I know is that when you're starting out, and the bottom is a bad word. I don't like to say the bottom, but when you are new, right? You're highly motivated, you're really passionate, you want to do a good job, you have all those things going for you. When you're new, you need to really self-lead and really focus on self-improvement, education. Don't wait around for people to help you out or to develop you or to do those type of things. Seek out the people that you look at and you say, I want to be like that person, and be a pain in their neck. I was in medicine. I started off as a medic. I drove the doctors nuts. I was into everything, questions and Q&A, and take me to the operating room and show me how to do these things, all that stuff. And I can't even think right now. I'm sure there was an occasion, Bo. I can't even think right now where somebody told me no. But I had to have the courage to do that. So self-leadership. The rest of the rise to the ranks was only make a mistake once, learn from your mistakes, only make a mistake once. And once you are in charge of people and things and processes, so management versus leadership. So leadership is animate, management is inanimate. I hope everybody understands that. They get them confused sometimes. And leadership is the animate pieces, right? Whether or not they're in some chain of command that you have, or that just the fact that you're leading a process or a procedure and there's people involved. That's leadership. When you're leading people, and as I used to tell people when I was farther up the ranks, when people would come on board to be brand new leaders, your whole life should change. I think it's the second most important thing you do in life is leading other people, and raising children is probably right. And that's a leadership thing in itself. When you have other people's lives and their well-being, mental, physical, emotional well-being in your hands, and the decisions you make affect that sounds like work to me. That's that's not osmosis. It's not tapping your name badge and going, hey, you see that? It says manager. That doesn't work. You have to have some level of connection with the people that you lead and some level of understanding. So as I'm going through the ranks, I would say that when I figured this out, and I made some mistakes, big ones, I write about them. The book is full of mistakes. There's not a lot of victories in there, and because we don't learn a lot from home runs. There's might be victories at the end, but I didn't close any chapters like that. The book's meant to be introspective. So,
Mm-hmm.
but what I found is that the harder that I worked on the stuff that I was responsible below me on, so and some of that is process, right? Policy, process, the management things, and then the people things. The harder I worked down there, the farther I went up. So it was almost like the elevator will take you to the top, but if there's no floor in the elevator, you can't step in it. And
Mm-hmm.
the floor in the elevator are the people that you're leading, and you have got to make sure that foundation in your leadership is strong, because you're going to get pounded on by the people you work for. That's just the way it is. I mean, when things go wrong, it gets pushed down. When there's more work to be done, if you're good at what you do, you're probably going to get more. Those type of things, that's fine, and you need to get those accomplished, and you do that through your people. But a lot of times people get that inverse, and they think that when they're in a certain position, if they spend 80% of their time looking up and pleasing and 20% of their time looking down, that's successful. And the model should be flipped. And that sounds really easy, Bo. But I think if you look at what's going on in corporate America right now and what their number one concern is retention, recruiting, and turnover. A lot of money is going out of the doors in high percentage, 80, 90% of the companies in this nation, because of turnover. And I don't think, I'm having a conversation with a company today about Vet Ready, and their main motivation is trying to stick a thumb in the dike with turnover. It's 30 to 50% of the cost of a full FTE to turn a position over. So if the position's $50,000 annually, you're going to spend between $15,000 to $25,000 to get that person back online.
Tell me a little bit about Max Fab Consulting.
Yeah.
What do you guys
So
do, and what?
yeah,
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
born out of something that I thought would never. Yeah, if you'd have told me when I retired that I would have a company called Max Fab Consulting and what I would be doing, I would have shook my head and said, "Sounds like a great thing, but probably not where I'm headed." And so it started with the book. It started with somebody compelling me to write a book. You need to write a book. You got these stories, you got this stuff, and then in the book I wrote a chapter about Max Fab, which is the flag that you see behind me. And Max Fab was, and I won't give you the whole keynote because that'll take up the whole show, but Max Fab was, I decided when we were going to Iraq with 380 medics to do trauma medicine for the whole theater of operations. I was going to be the senior enlisted leader for the entire Iraqi theater of operations. And everything funneled through us. I knew we were going to have a lot of bad days. So two things, right? Some of that's painful. So I equated pain to push-ups because I hate them more than probably anything in the world. So we did a lot of push-ups together. And my answer to how you doing, Chief, every day was maximum fabulous. And people would say, what the heck is that? And I would say, that's the highest of the hierarchy on the attitudinal scale. And if you're not there, you need to work to get there, because that's how we're going to survive. No matter how bad it gets around here, we need it. So there you go. So there's Max Fab Consulting. It's focused in a few areas. Some of it's leadership development. I speak. I'm doing like three speeches this month. I speak on leadership development. Some of the questions you already asked me about, how you work through the hierarchy and some of those things, some of that stuff's incorporated in the teachings. I work with some other local leaders. Every leader's got a different genre. Mine's obviously military driven, but with the civilian flavor, especially during COVID and other disaster situations. But it's always good to work with other people that have a little bit different genre on leadership, because it needs to fit whoever the customer is, or whoever the client is, or whoever has a need. So we work on those things together. But the Max Fab's main focus is on veteran transition. And the reason I got there, Bo, is because my transition has been awful. And it took me a while to, figure out that can't do it by myself. I need help. And that's help with PTSD, help with moral injury, all those things that are part of me now, how to make that energy positive and not negative. And once I got that kind of squared away and I looked at this veteran transition thing, I found out not only is it not me, but everybody has a transition story. Some are really extreme, some are not as extreme, but there is a transition story. And I kind of liken it to the weather map where there's a hurricane And then out of that, they got all the arrows of all the different directions a hurricane may go. And that's kind of the veteran transition. And so you look and you got a bright idea, and a lot of veterans have bright ideas. And there's 46,000 veteran service organizations in our country. And I'd say 46,000 or 45 of them, or 900 of them, whatever, work with veterans, right? And the key word there is with, right? They find veterans and they take them fishing, or they find veterans and they put them in groups to do things. So they find veterans and they get them a job, right? MaxFab works for veterans. And when you were talking about moving to the hierarchy, and I was talking about taking care of the folks below you, I don't think my approach to anything in all of this has changed. And what veterans need is they need an environment to reassimilate to, because we're all about our environment, right? I can change who you are by changing your environment. There's an old movie called Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. And if you've ever seen it, the whole movie is just about that. About you take somebody that's poor and on the streets, and you flip that around, and you take somebody that's got everything that they could ever want, and you change their environment, and they become what the other one was, right? So what we don't have is this bridge from transition into an environment. So if you're raising your kids, you would never take your kid to daycare. In fact, nobody takes their kid to daycare. They go to the daycare. They walk every square inch. They talk to everybody that works there. They look in the refrigerators. They see what's served for lunch. They do all of that. They talk to 10 parents that already have their kids at daycare. And then if they decide to use that daycare, they vet their child for about 3 to 6 months to make sure they're thriving. Veterans, we drive you to the curb and we go in that building. I hope it works out for you. Because the people in the building aren't trained. So MaxFab is focused on working with corporations and business owners and institutions, city, county government, small, those institutions. We are working with them to help them understand and create the environment for the veterans, and stay with them to help them shape that, because that's a cultural thing, right? When you have a cultural thing, you have to really work on that, and to stay with them through that process, so that when the veterans are out there with the lights off, with their hands in front of them, trying to feel their way through this transition piece, that there's actually a signal there that says, hey, these companies are vet ready. And ready being an act, get to yes. And so we work with companies that are ready to get to yes, that understand what corporate veteran readiness and corporate veteran responsibility are, and they're ready to sign up for that. And this is not turning their whole HR department and their whole policies and procedures on its head. But doggone it, Bo, they certainly know what to do with somebody that's in a wheelchair. They certainly know what to do with somebody that's deaf. And we just did Vet Ready with a church. And I was very fortunate that the veterans in the church, we did a whiteboarding exercise with the non-veterans and the veterans. And it started off with me asking the non-veterans to describe veterans. And the words that they used were almost biblical as far as adjectives. It makes you feel really good. Wow, that's how people see us. But it's really a barrier, because all of the things that they said really says, well, if you're a veteran, you can just handle it on your own. There's nothing that needs to be done for you, because there's unless we've been injured or something like that, there's a lot of us are walking around looking quote unquote normal, and we're veterans, so we have all of these magical powers. I had the veterans describe themselves to the non-veterans, and by the time they started using the descriptives of broken and lost and no purpose and wandering and all the other things, one of the chaplains had tears in his eyes. And the guy sitting next to him, who was a youth pastor, he goes, my dad was a Marine. He's 45 years old. The guy's 45. He goes, my dad was a Marine. And he goes, not till right now do I fully understand. And so, that's the hard stop on the mission of MaxFab, is to get people to that level of realization that there's a gap there. There needs to be a conversation. And then we need to understand how to make that environment just the same as anybody else that would come in with a disability or a need. And then once we figure out how to farm that, and we have adult conversations with the veterans, that you're not in a Napoleonic structure, and it's not always going to work this way, and it is a little bit squishy. And yes, meetings are going to start 10 minutes late and probably run 10 minutes over, and that doesn't make anybody savages. It's just what the culture is. And so you need to pick your battles. but the ability to take veterans and mine them, you know, if you went to a diamond mine tomorrow, you could be standing next to the next Hope diamond, and you probably wouldn't know it because you're not a geologist and you know nothing about diamonds. Because when diamonds come out of mines, they don't look like much. They have to be polished and cut, and all those things have to happen to that. And that's really what the employers are getting when they get a veteran. And so they need to be geologists, and need to know how to do that. So yeah, so that's what we're doing at Max Fab, and it's exciting. And it moves a lot slower than I'm used to because we have to have the right people doing facilitation. I'm doing most of it, but we've trained a couple of facilitators now. I have to have the right people doing facilitation. You got to have the right partners to work with. They have to be open-minded, and we'll walk away. I mean, if we get to the part where, hey, you've got to be open to these kind of things. If they say, well, I don't think we're there yet, then we need to use our time in a different space. And then it takes a little bit of time to have the initial conversation and then to shape and form stuff. So, I wish it was going light speed and it was in every state, and it was just everybody just used it as a second word out of their mouth. But and we'll get there. And Montana's the best place to do it because we've got twice the amount of veterans per capita, and we have a need. So.
Mm-hmm. So switching gears a little bit, I wanted to get your insight on impact and motivation. And,
sure.
First off, what general advice would you give to a leader that wants to be more impactful? I want to increase my impact within my organization.
Well, I tell leaders, if you want to be impactful, there's two things. You have to learn to, you have to identify your informal leaders in your organization. You need to have a relationship with those people, and because they're going to give you the actual playbook on how to be impactful. A lot of times as you're moving through the ranks and you're looking up, you look at strategy, or you look at, quality outcomes, or whatever the widget is, or there's a volume, and you look at charts and you want things going up. And if they're going down, then you freak out and you chase failure. This is what HR departments do when they have high turnover. They never get to work on making an impact in the organization. They're just plugging holes all day long because there's people in, people out. They don't have time to do anything else. So you need to really have a relationship with informal leaders. And if you don't know what an informal leader is, you need to do some reading on it, or get somebody like me to come in and help you identify those people. If you do know what an informal leader is, you need to have relationships with those, and you need to defer to their expertise. So if you want to be impactful in your organization, and you have an idea or a strategy, or you want to incorporate something, odds are, especially as you get into mid-level and then early senior management in that area, you are not close enough to the tactical application of whatever you're doing. You are not close enough anymore to have a full appreciation for that. So no matter what your compass is, no matter where you set true north, odds are it's off a little bit. And the only way to do that is to have those informal leaders where you can say, we need to get from here to there. And somebody says, so for instance, if a pipe broke right now in your office there, and you saw water running out of the wall, you might know how to shut the water off, but who are you going to call? Plumber.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many leaders don't call plumbers? Because they think calling the plumber is a sign of weakness. So what they'll do is they'll tear a big hole in their wall. This is figurative. They'll tear a big hole in their wall. They'll look in there. They'll say, I think the leak is coming from here. They'll turn the water on 4 or 5 times, get sprayed in the face. They'll say, the leak is right there. And somebody will go, oh, that's copper pipe. And they'll go, well, we don't even have the tools to cut the pipe or to do any of this type of stuff. Then they'll sit down for a week with no water, trying to Google on how to fix copper pipe. And then somebody walks in and goes, why don't we just call a plumber? And the only reason they don't call the plumber is because they're in their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of books, and you can read a pile of them. And I read them, and I wrote them. And they're good things to read. There's one book that's been around for a long, long time, Bo. And in there, it's got some basic examples of ways to conduct yourself to be successful. It's the Bible. Now, I'm not telling everybody you need to be Bible thumping, but you know what? With all this magical stuff, you can actually go on Google or ChatGPT and say, show me a Bible verse that applies to my problem. And there's some really good words in there. This is not about
Mm-hmm.
Bible study. There's just good words in there. So there's, there's piles of recommendations, and there's people like myself that wrote books based on failure. Here's what I did. Here's kind of the way I applied it. And then here's some things to think about. It's very Ken Blanchard-esque. Well, if you think about it, if you have a problem or a strategy, a desire, you want to move your organization forward, and you say, we're going to stop playing football, we're going to play baseball. Then ask somebody in the organization, is there any baseball players around here? And get out of their way. It'll all work out. And I guarantee you, if you're a director and you do this day over day over day, and you mind your informal leaders, find out what the pulse of the organization is, when, who wants to stab you in the face because you made some decision that you thought was brilliant and they were ready to kill you, and listen to them about the pulse, right? I know you want to do this, but we can't. It sounds like being a chief in the Air Force, actually. I know you want to do this, but you can't, right? And when you do that and you find that balance, and you can keep your ego in check and be humble enough to go, that's a bad idea. And the informal leader goes, yep. Well, can we get from here to there? Yeah, if you do these things. And you say, go do it. And get out of their way and go on to your next thing. You don't think that looks favorably on you? You don't think that you're going to go up? I think it's 100%. I can guarantee you, if you do that genuinely, with integrity, with the right motivation, and you're taking care of your people along the way, you will go up, because your people will push you up. They'll want you up there. You ever heard the term turtle on a fence post? Don't be a turtle on a fence post. So for your listeners that haven't, it's a reference to leaders. And if a leader's ever referred to as being a turtle on a fence post, it's the farmer's driving down the road. He sees a turtle on a fence post. He knows three things immediately, right? One, it didn't get up there by itself. Two, it doesn't belong up there. And three, you feel so sorry for it, you want to help it down. Don't be that guy or gal. And the best way to be a turtle on a fence post is to not do what I just said.
So what are some qualities that you think are essential for a leader to have to effectively motivate the people within their team?
Right. I'll give you one. When I work with like university leadership classes, and I'll go in and speak per day, I'll ask them, give me your one or two words to describe a good leader, perfect leader. They give them all to you, Bo, and they hit them all right on the head. Humility, integrity, grace, humble, servant. They give you all those, but they never get to my word, because I think they take it for granted, and I think it's the biggest misstep. It's presence. It's getting out of your calendar. You can't do any of that. You can't be humble. You can't be integral, at least to the point where you're credible, if you're not present. And if you're not present, you've lost people, because you have to be in the same space that they are, because it's about environment, right? We just had this conversation about environment. It's about environment. So you're not going to fix a workspace that doesn't have proper lighting or heating or cooling unless you've stood in it. And far too often we get so wrapped up with, we open our calendars in the morning, we get high anxiety because we have a chunk of white space in there. We think people are going to think we're screwing off. So we got to find something to fill it, whatever it is, a lunch or something that's totally irrelevant, which that should be your time in the environment, in the space. Tactical awareness, not micromanagement, tactical awareness. You shouldn't go tactical to go find something wrong and then to point your finger at whoever the manager or the director is or those types. You didn't do, but you should go tactical to go down and say, hey, what's going on? And somebody goes, I don't know what's going on, right? And you go to the manager. The manager might already be working the problem, but you say to the manager, if that's a problem tomorrow, you need to let me know, right? To fix it. Nobody's in trouble. That's not a negative. But if you don't know that, and all you see is some spreadsheet with a line going down, and you go, what is going on here? What happened right there? And you circle that, and somebody goes, well, that's when the boiler quit running. What? You need to teach people that constantly. And you can't do that unless you're present. People have to be able to see you. You have to be real to them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So every team has multiple personalities and, egos. I hope you don't have big egos, but everybody does.
Sure.
How can leaders kind of tailor their motivational strategies to accommodate all of those different kinds of people and those different personalities?
Right. Well, the first people that get run over are introverts, right? The ones that are sitting in the room going, oh, I have the solution to this problem if everybody would shut up for 5 minutes. So obviously I'm not an introvert. And so it took me a little bit of time to appreciate what they bring. So you have to facilitate you have to let everybody say out loud what they've got on their mind. And you need to take all that in consideration in a respectful way and then give direction based on that. So, if people are heard, it calms everybody else down. But when you've got, the spring butt in the room that dominates the conversation, guilty is charged right here, that guy. Some of my development stuff, my leadership development stuff, they used to videotape us. It's painful for me. Painful. They'd go, okay, here's you, man. Here's you on steroids. The stuff coming out of my mouth is not bad. The directions I'm giving is not bad. It's just that I've sucked up 98% of the oxygen. There's nothing else for anybody to breathe. And if you allow that to happen, then what you are going to do is build ego, because people are going to be, yep, I'm the guy. If something's up, the boss comes to me. I'm that guy, and then what happens is that the introverts, not weak or meek. People say, oh, the meek. It's not. Actually, they're probably stronger. They probably have more fortitude than you'll ever give them credit for. What happens is they go, you know what? They give up. It's almost like quiet quitting. Right? They give up and they go, you know what? I'm just going to go ask Bob what he thinks about this. And then all of a sudden, this guy, who's really not the best leader, he's just the loudest guy in the room, becomes the informal leader, which is not good, right? That's why I said you got to identify your informal leaders, because some of those need to be, they need their powers taken away. And some of them need to be empowered. And I don't like that word either, but some of them need to be empowered to continue to be informal leaders with a relationship with you. So that sounds really complex, but if everybody in the organization feels like they are on equal footing when it comes to respect, and you say, what we're going to do is respect everybody, and you call people out when they are violating that, it calms all that down. Then it calms the egos down, because what it drives one-way conversations in the hallway or in the office, where somebody comes in and goes, we should be doing that, and you go, okay, well, let's ask everybody else. Think about how disarming that is. That might be a great idea, but let's ask everybody else. And if you facilitate that and everybody is respected, odds are that the idea of the loud guy is not going to be perfect. So, there's a lot of self-discovery in there. Well, that's me talking about me 25 years ago.
Right. Yeah, that's good. The piece about, everybody's got an introvert or multiple introverts on their team. And oftentimes, I can't remember who I had. I had a guest on here that said those are the people that you kind of need to seek out, because they've got so much built up inside of them that they don't. Sometimes we as leaders don't give them a chance to get out, and I think that's very profound and good thing to do as leaders, is seek those people out. In your opinion, how does a leader's personal motivation impact the motivation of those they lead?
Love this question. It's a little bit loaded, because we all have aspirations, right? Especially when we're younger. Well, we all look up 3, 4, or 5 senator. I want to be whatever, right? And you know what the 100 U.S. senators say in the mirror? Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. President. Because that's probably where they want to be, right? Now, if I had one of those senators here, they'd probably go, no, but it just is what it is. We have to be transparent with what our goals are. Imagine this. I've done this. Imagine this. Imagine sitting around a table and you're heading a meeting. I like to use the corporate boardroom as a visual, because most people have sat in meetings, right? And where people sit at the tables, but you're at the head of the table. And imagine if you said to somebody, when I went to college, or when I went in the Air Force, or whatever I did, a couple of years into that, I always wanted to be a general or a CEO. And so I've always kind of had my life on that glide path. And quite frankly, I've been successful on that glide path. And so, I'm a couple steps away from that. And that hasn't changed. Imagine what people, right? Imagine what that does to people, because people are going to ask you, well, what does that mean? And it means in my mind, what I'd like to do in life, this is not my last stop. And I would like to be here. But, The only way that that's going to happen is that all of us are the best versions of who we can be, and I take care of you. And if you're successful, I'll be successful, and that will happen naturally. So I'm not going to force it. And if you see me forcing it, or I'm neglecting you because you think that I've got aspirations elsewhere, please call me out on it. Then it's over, man. It's over. It's completely over. But what happens is that leaders think, well, I can't tell my subordinates what is my aspirations and my dreams. Actually, they want to know that. You're a human being too. Think about how many really powerful leaders, people that are in power positions, the most embarrassing moment in their life is when they have to go in the hospital. It just happened. Our Secretary of Defense went in the hospital, and because of that phenomenon, they didn't tell the nation that he was in the hospital.
Yep.
Because being in the hospital appeared to be weak. Actually, what should have happened was, I'm going in the hospital, everything's fine because the two people below me can run this thing for the next 90 days without me, as it should be. Say a prayer for me. I'm going to go get better. I'm going to come back stronger. That's it. That's all people want. We make so many assumptions about what people are going to think or do that it paralyzes us. And we make really bad decisions off of that. Trust your people. There will be a Judas in your midst. It will happen. There will be somebody that will take your vulnerability and spin it and use it against you. And you just need to be prepared for that. And the best way to counter that person is to make sure whatever that they spin is the truth. Whatever you said is the truth. It can't be distorted in any other way. So that you can stand in front of somebody and say, what Bob said is right. Yep, I did say that in a meeting. And that was for the benefit of my people so we can move forward. And just squash it. Yep. Move on. Just move on. But be uber transparent. I'm telling you, I've tried to coach executives before. And we get to this point, and I'm out, never to be seen again. Yep. Because they really disagree with me, and I actually appreciate them doing that because they're wasting.
Yeah, that's good. So, last question in this section here: how can a leader use consistent and ongoing feedback? I'm a huge feedback guy. Right. How can they use that to sustain the motivation, keep their people motivated within their organization? You probably always need to add one or two more things to your plate that you didn't need to know. So soft skills, soft, hard, right? So if I give John his wrench, his steel-toed boots, and his hard hat, and his earplugs, he's going to produce the widget, right? So you have to do that. That keeps people motivated, right? A soldier's morale is based on having a working rifle. Give a soldier something that doesn't work, their morale's terrible. So those are the basics. But this soft piece of not thinking that, well, I've got it all figured out and I don't have any more room on my plate, but I know you wish we had daycare. I know you wish we had, man, you better pay attention to that. I learned that lesson in the non-commissioned officers academy. Most of us who either didn't have kids or had wives that stayed home, we went through this drill of we're all deploying. We're all going to go to the desert and do this thing. We did this drill. And they said, write down your top 10 priorities before you leave. I need a will, or I need, whatever it is, your top 10 priorities. And there was two guys in the class that wrote down daycare. And we picked on them. We were like, what? You're going to war. You're a killer. You're a warrior. Daycare, ha, ha, ha. Actually, completely relevant. He's ineffective. The guy's combat ineffective because that is the distraction to him because kids aren't taken. Don't get so wrapped up in the process, procedure, and the product that you don't understand the soft things. You have got to be able to add those one or two things to your plate. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care about them, and you're going to have to do these things. Sorry, folks. Sorry, leaders out there that are listening to this. I've just made you uncomfortable and you think that I'm nuts. The next time you have a mass exodus or you have a large loss in departments where people are walking out, you need to stop the people, make sure that you do some exit interviews and ask, because you're going to find out that a lot of people leave because of the soft things and not the hard things. You're paying them just fine. They got the benefits they need. They probably all have their hard hats and their steel-toed boots. It's this thing. It's this other thing. And you didn't think it was important. And now it's cost you 30 to 50% to replace them. Yeah. That's good. It's the intangible things that leaders have to focus on, and that's what drives employee satisfaction and fulfillment, and that's good. Hey, at the end of the day, what do you want Dave Nordel to be remembered by, and what do you want your legacy to be?
I love it. Well, some of it's stuff we talked about, but I just want to be known as a guy that tried to make a positive difference every day. Some crumbs and crackers where people can point at it and say, you know, Dave Nordel did that. And there's, we can talk about stuff like that. There's a few legacy things laying around that I'm pretty proud of. That was some way it's because we're trying to fill a soft need, and it happened, and it's resonated. So yeah, just that I was, doing the right thing, and I'm a giver to a fault. So sometimes, in our earthly state, people will go, man, you could have made more money, you could have done those things, and that's not the driver, the calling. It's not a financial thing. If we're making a positive difference in some little way every day, then it keeps what we love and cherish and behold moving forward. So yeah, my podcast is the Kangaroo Leadership Podcast, and it's only because that the kangaroo can't physically move forward or backwards. The kangaroo always has to go forward. And I think in life, there's a lot to be learned by how the kangaroo conducts itself. So there you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, man, I appreciate you coming on today. I love listening to you talk, and I was fortunate enough to take some notes today. So I'm going to apply some of this. And I did start your book, and I appreciate you sending that to me.
Yeah,
it's very good so far. I actually sent the other one with my dad. He's a huge reader. So, so it's been great. But I look forward to following you from here on out. And again, thanks for joining me today.
You bet. And I'll probably do a reverse engineer and have you on the podcast. So I've got all you guys' names, and we'll do that, and then you can chat. I'll listen.
Sounds good.
I'll work on that.
I look forward to that.
You're the best, brother. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lead to Win podcast. If you're listening this week, make sure to drop a rating on whatever app you're listening on. I'd love to hear from listeners and make this podcast even more relevant to you. Also, make sure to follow the Lead to Win podcast on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Give us a follow and feel free to share the content. Again, thanks for listening this week. I'm your host, Bo Bergen. See you next Tuesday.